Welcome back to the Start and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and in this series, we're diving headfirst into the world of tech with the people who are coding the future from the front lines. This is the place where we refactor the way you think about scaling tech teams, debugging their journeys, reviewing their stories, and pushing boundaries to ship better insights. Whether you're a seasoned techie who's seen your fair share of legacy code, an aspiring professional ready to deploy your skills, or just fascinated by the world of technology, this episode will give you unique insights and practical takeaways to add to your backlog.
We don't work in tech, we work in change.
So grab your headphones, commit to this listen, and let's sprint into another episode. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Richard, look, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
I know that you stayed overnight in Manchester and looking very dapper today. I feel really embarrassed, but always start these podcasts off with a really deep question, which is deep.
Yeah.
Who is Richard Wainwright?
Who am I?
Yeah. Who are you?
I start off with something easy. You didn't even prep me for that, did
Sorry.
you? No, I find it difficult to describe because over my career, I've kind of turned into a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Right. So, but if you're looking for like a one line, I'll call myself like a commercial CTO. So what does that mean? It means that I come at technical problems with a commercial mindset. And I think about what the business is trying to achieve, but most importantly, what the client is trying to achieve when I solve problems. So that's what it is. But who am I outside of work? Father of two. I run, I cycle. I found the gym about a year ago. So I've actually got some muscle now, which is a bizarre sort of, I was accused of being like a rake for a long time. And also for my sins, I actually lead a scout troop as well. So I take young people outdoors and just teach them some skills and some resilience. And I try to give back. And life's been very, very kind to me. So if I can help people out, that's always something I try to do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love you saying like life's been very, very kind to you. Like it's not all your fault. You know, there is some luck, some luck, but no, I like that. That's wonderful. And weirdly enough, you mentioned there the scout thing.
Yeah.
Amongst the tech community, there is a big pattern of people who are involved in the scouts. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think there is a kind of like a counterbalance to the life we lead, which is always on, surrounded by screens. I've got one to my left, right here, and whatnot. And that moving out and doing something outdoors just kind of resets that. But also, it's very practical. The scouting is about developing skills in people to be independent. And you often do that by providing them with core kind of outdoor skills, which is, can you light a fire? Can you pitch a tent? Can you cook for yourself? And those skills instill confidence in people because they know they can look after themselves, which then means they can go off and take other challenges. And I think that it's a quite simple process. I think that tech people like that. But then there's the other side of it, which is it equipped me with the confidence to do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. I went at 19 years old, didn't speak a word of German, and went and lived for a year in Germany. Wow. And had to find myself somewhere to live and pack and all that. And it was some of the skills that I picked up through scouting that allowed me to do that. Because it's just like, well, what am I going to take with me? So you lay your kit out on the bed and you pack it all up and plan what you're going to do, and then you break down the challenge. And so, yeah, it's why people get involved? I don't know. It is an opportunity to give back, but there's also quite a structured way of thinking about the world, a very, very deliberate way of approaching it, which I think engages tech people in a particular way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you touched on your background there, nipping to Germany for a while, which is awesome. Could you walk us through how you got to where you are now, to today?
Yeah, there's no grand plan here.
Okay.
Right. I didn't want to come out of university and go, right, this is what I'm going to do. So I kind of left uni, and I remember my first interview. There was a guy called Gordon Loader. He was literally just retired. I was messaging him the other day, and he called me in, and I gave him my carefully prepared CV. And he just took a look at it, and honest to God, he then put it in the bin. And he says, nicest way possible, there's nothing on there that I really need to know. Tell me about yourself. And what he was looking for was, actually, can you talk to people? Can you engage? Not what I'd rather you are, you're just a technical person. And I think that's been at the core of where my sort of career's gone, which has been that intersection between technology and people. So how do I get people to understand what tech can do for them? How I can solve those problems. So I started off in a lab, literally building networks and switches, and then the idea was that I'd run demonstrations for customers, And when they realised I could talk to people, I kept getting in demand. And before I know it, was in the EBC, which was a briefing centre for customers. And it kind of snowballed from there to me becoming a pre-sales person. And so I spent the best part of a decade out there with salespeople, meeting customers and solving technical challenges for them, mostly around networks and telephones and things like that. And after a while, I kind of got bored of playing with the same Lego bricks. Right? I mean, I love networks. I might mention later, but I VLAN my home network. It's a bit weird, I know, but I'm a tech guy. And then I realised I wanted to do something different. So my career then kind of took a bit of a zig and a zag, which the HR people watching this will probably be delighted to hear this, right? Because they teach people this. But I said, I'm kind of bored with doing the tech stuff. How do you build propositions to take to market? So, and that sort of started to pivot off into a sort of product direction. And then through serendipity, I ended up then doing business alliances. So how do you get two companies to work together? So I worked with Dimension Data and Microsoft and herded the cats into a room and convinced them to do some stuff together, which was actually quite an achievement. And then I left there and actually spent some time as a CTO of a small MSP, learned a huge amount, mostly about what I didn't know. And then from there, just spent some time with some larger MSPs before having, I think I mentioned to you before, a lot of fun with a fintech. I've never worked in an organization where such energy, but also so many resources to go and pursue that. And the shift from working in a business where you're worried about cost and margin to where you're worried about speed was a very different experience for me. And then after that, I spent some time with a large US corporate helping solve data protection challenges. And now I'm doing some network and trying to work out what my next full-time career would be.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's got a bit of a zig and a zag there. But what does it mean? It means a lot of technical people follow a linear career path. And there's genuinely nothing wrong with that. A bit like becoming a junior lawyer all the way up to barrister. I've kind of gone off and done a few different things. And it just means, I don't know, I like to think I see the world slightly differently to a lot of technical leaders.
Right. And the reason you see the world slightly differently is because of all the different
exactly that, yeah,
roles you've done.
I mean, sitting in a room with two CEOs and trying to get them to agree to do something.
Yeah.
You learn things like, well, that doesn't happen in the room. There's a dozen meetings that you have in their surrounding teams to get them to agree to stuff, and that meeting's a rubber stamping meeting. It's like when anybody who thinks they take things to sign-off committees and think that's where the decision gets made. No, if you haven't met every member of that committee before you even go in the room and got them on board so they understand what you're trying to achieve, that meeting will be a failure. And people go, oh yeah, I went in and they sent me away with a load of stuff to go and do. No, what they did is, I don't understand what you're trying to achieve, go away and come back again. And then they'll play sort of bureaucracy ping pong with you because you haven't solved that little bit of a problem. So it's these little lessons I learned about how you make things happen in businesses that isn't about following process. It's about not circumventing process, but understanding the people are the process.
Right.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. It's really, it is very interesting. And like you said, I mean, I've been working with engineers for over 10 years now, and you're right. There is a very linear path.
Yes.
Most of the time that people follow. Yeah. And we actually joked about before we started the podcast talking about how, when things come up that aren't technical, like, things like marketing and whatever, like why would they lean on you for that expertise? But I guess because you've seen it from all different angles and you're there to, you said, stick your nose in rather than get your hands involved. Yeah.
And it's hard for technical people to do that because what pays your mortgage is that specific technical skill set you have. Yeah. And yes, that skill set pretty much depreciates over 3 years and then like COBOL comes back in the financial sector. But to step off and do something different is dangerous because if you let those technical skills atrophy, you don't command the salary, which then means you step backwards to a certain extent. So it's always quite hard for technical people to take those kind of risks. So the linear path is much more straightforward. And I think most technical people are quite risk adverse anyway. So to do that shift, and in many respects, that shift was forced upon me in some scenarios. But then again, I don't know, maybe a lack of boredom pushed me in that direction either way as well. Or a realization that I probably wouldn't be as successful as maybe other people on that linear path. I had to find a way to go around that and come in from a different problem. But yeah, it's genuinely hard for technical people to take a risk. And one of the reasons they care so much about training is they know they're only paid for what they know.
Sure.
And if they're not developing that and they're falling behind on a 3-year cycle, they start to get really quite twitchy.
And with the introduction of, I'm going to say AI, with AI coming into play, I know nowadays having the most knowledge on a particular subject perhaps isn't actually much of a differentiator anymore, because you have something that has it all already, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so what does that mean for people who do rely on their knowledge in their brain? Yeah.
So I put a post on LinkedIn about a month ago, and I had a screenshot of the ChatGPT box.
Yeah.
And a screenshot of the Teams box.
Right.
So when you interact with so many of your colleagues now, you just send them a message on Teams. But to all intents and purposes, there's no difference to you messaging an AI bot. And what I worry is that when it comes to just the ability to answer questions or even solve problems or lay some data out, then the AI is going to be better than the human. So the differentiation then comes on how you interact and how you engage, or how you lead, or how you be part of a team. And what AI is exceptionally good at is doing things that have been done before, but it's not that, despite all the pictures you see on image generators, it's not actually that good at creating new ideas or solving new problems, because it's a pattern matcher. So what that means is that we need to invest time as technical individuals, but also as when we're building the next generation up, to say, you need to be able to be part of the team. You need to be able to engage. You need to be able to apply the knowledge you have in a creative manner. And I think actually UK schooling is pretty good in this, and that it does do technical skill and creativity. One of the things I just go back to Scout Movement is that leadership isn't a part of that. So how do you step into that leadership role to pull a team forward? Or you're a technical leader. How do you get the guys to think about the actual problem they're trying to solve, rather than what they're trying to do to embellish their CV or because they're interested in, right? So so AI just shifts the problem from how much technical knowledge you can retain to how can you understand when and how to apply that knowledge. So you can give me a chisel, but if I don't know how to use it to, I'm stretching the analogy poorly here, but to create a hole in a bit of wood, it's useless.
Yes.
But if you know when to apply it. So what's interesting now is I don't need to know how to write valid JSON or valid Docker compose files, because the AI will do that for me.
Yes. Yeah.
But I need to know what's in them, and I need to know how they work, and I need to know how to apply them. It's just that ability to do that very detailed writing goes away to a certain extent.
Yes, and the broader context of the actual situation itself and how it fits in.
Exactly. And it just allows you to move faster.
Yes.
Or do things with smaller teams, because that AI can take the role of a specialist skill you used to have to hire for.
Yeah, you know what? Because I obviously the uses of AI, like, everyone knows, I'm not going to go over that.
Yeah.
And the being able to do things much quicker, and the lower level work that doesn't require much creativity or whatever is obvious, right? But do you feel like there is some beauty in doing the grunt work? And I feel like there is an element of, does that then lead to breakthroughs and ideas and creativity because you're doing something that's so laborious and monotonous and
let me kind of answer that question in different ways. And one of the joys of my engineering degree is not that it taught me a lot of stuff which is now completely archaic and strange, right? But COBOL being one of them. But but what it taught you is how things actually worked.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helped to accelerate my career in the early days is IP telephony was a new thing in 2003 when I started. Is I actually understood how it worked. And I actually understood how it worked, down to the protocol layers and the network flows and all that kind of thing. And my peers, who were 20-year veterans of TDM or digital communications, didn't. And it's not that they weren't smart; it's just they hadn't had that foundational knowledge because they had a different career path. And what it meant is just I could then accelerate my understanding. Now, the modern programming in IT is so abstracted from the actual technology you're using; it's crazy. But that means you don't really understand what it is. So there's this. I've heard stories from other CTOs telling me they were speaking to a relatively junior developer, and they were asking where the data was stored, and they said, "Oh, it's in a bucket." They didn't actually know that a bucket is a virtualized a storage environment on a virtual server in a data center somewhere located elsewhere. So then they struggle to get their head around, well, how do you make that resilient? How do you make it geographically dispersed? How do you think about the regulatory impact of where that data is sitting? So unless you understand how it works, you then struggle with some of the other concepts that go with it. So to your point, if you do the grunt work, if you do the dirty, dangerous and dull stuff, which I recommend everybody has a go at, you have an appreciation of how the building blocks build up, and then you can solve the problems. And AI will allow you to be so abstracted, you can make some absolutely shocking mistakes if you don't do that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that's a really great way to put it.
Yeah.
So you've been in many different businesses. You've spoken about there. You're now an advisor to businesses. Yeah. Is there a common pattern that you see amongst these businesses mistakes that people are making? Is there a common mistake?
Or around technology or
around everything? Yeah, whatever you think.
I'll start with tech, because obviously this is a tech podcast, right? And before I go on to talk about something else. But yeah, most organizations that try to embrace tech, they approach it as a technology problem. And it's not. I have a hackneyed phrase I keep using now, and anybody who spoke to me in the last 6 months will probably get bored of it, but we don't work in tech, we work in change. Right? And then let me just say that we don't work in tech, we work in change. Customers and partners and colleagues are trying to achieve something with technology. They're not trying to acquire technology. And lots of organizations then fail with this because then they see that the deployment of an application or a service or a tool or whatever is IT's problem. It's not, it's a business problem. And I remember meeting the CIO of a large government department. I had no business meeting him. I was I was like, this is brilliant. I've somehow got myself into the big leagues. And I was positioning infrastructure to him, but he was just starting to roll out Office 365 or Microsoft 365. And I said, oh, how's it going? And he said, oh, it's great. We've got the tech team lined up and we've got a partner. It's going to be great. And I said, have you, I'm not trying to sell you anything here because we don't do this, but have you engaged a change team to go off and embed this tech into people's workflows and change the way they work? So no, we don't need that. That's all sorted. And somehow I got to meet him again 3 months later. I was, it's a bit of a humble brag thing, but he turned around and says, you were absolutely right. The project is going nowhere. We've stood all the tech up, but there's zero adoption. And it's because people hadn't thought about what they're trying to achieve with it. And I see it time and time again is that the business is unwilling to change itself. It thinks the technology is a magic bullet or magic wand. And the technology normally, especially SaaS applications, want you to work in a very particular way. And that's how you get the efficiency and how you get the change. Whereas the companies that try and acquire the technology try to shoehorn that tech into their existing processes. So when they do that, they end up probably ruining the application they deployed. It doesn't deliver the value they're after. And all they've done is layer cost into the organization. So that's the common problem is people approach it as a technology problem, not a change problem. And so if we can encourage companies to think about the deployment of tech as about how they're changing their business operationally, then I think they'll be a lot more successful with it.
I'm not to give you a ChatGPT prompt here, but say I am a CIO at a large business, and I want to implement a product across my team. What would be the first step?
Well, the first step is to make sure you understand what you're trying to achieve. Right? So if you are, companies care about three things. They care about cost, they care about revenue, and they care about risk. And everything else is noise, right? And you can distill down to those three things. And so if you are deploying tech to take cost out of the organization, that means what you're really saying is we've got to fundamentally retool a business process so that the tech is doing it for us. And then, it sounds horrible, we can either redeploy or make those people redundant. But that's not normally what happens, is they kind of give it to the tech team, we deploy it, and then kind of leave that to one side, and the board or the CEO gets frustrated. They haven't seen either the efficiency improvement or the cost reduction or whatnot. So it's about understanding what you set out to do and then mapping back using the departmental owner or the VP or who's championing the project to push the thing through and make sure that change is embraced by the team. I've got a favourite story I tell about Salesforce, right? So any organisation that has some sort of CRM and a Salesforce team, sales team, they will all whinge about the data in Salesforce. right? It's never accurate. You can't forecast it. The marketing team whinge about the leads aren't followed up and all that kind of stuff. And it's been the same in almost every organisation I've ever worked for. But apart from one short, bright moment where a new country manager came in and he called all his sales directors together for a meeting on Friday for the forecast. And they did what they've always done, which is they start rolling down from their team and they fill in a spreadsheet and they judge and they judge and they judge, and then they present like magic a number to the country manager. And in fairness, they use a lot of their experience and knowledge to judge it out and give that point. But he just said, no, I'm not interested in your spreadsheet. Show me Salesforce. And and so then they pulled it up, the first guy, and he says, you show me what's going on here. And what was in Salesforce had no match to what was on his spreadsheet. And so the guy just stopped the meeting. Said, this isn't going to work for me. I need the data in Salesforce. Let's meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. And he had to do it for a couple of days before it all washed through, and they did it. And the reason I tell that story is not because I want to celebrate Salesforce being used properly for once. It's because in that scenario, it took a leader to be unreasonable to their team so that they could actually get the change involved to use the application they're paying a fortune for. Sure. And it took that single piece of unreasonableness to shift the behavior of the team under them, so they actually then got the value of the $150 a month seat for Salesforce that they bought.
Yeah.
But if you hadn't done that, they'd be still churning their way through, having a CRM which is useless to them for forecasting and all the stuff they're paying the money for, and a bunch of spreadsheets.
It's interesting to say that with change. There's I'm reading a good book at the minute called by Shane Parrish. It's called Mental Models. It's like it's volume 2 or something.
Yeah.
And it basically relays scientific theories to real life situations and whatever. Anyway, there's loads.
I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, put it on the list. Yeah. You'll never read it. But one of the things he has in there is activation energy, and he talks about activation energy, and he talks about how if an object's still, it takes more activation, more energy to make it move, and if it's moving, it's harder to stop. So all that sort of stuff. I'm really butchered that.
Yeah.
But essentially, what he's getting at is the bigger the change, the more activation energy is required to keep it going, or getting it at least off the mark. And it's a good way to think about. I think he refers to it in just like in habits in life. A big habit, a big change is going to require you to really stick with it, and especially for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, make sure you're really pushing. It's a lot of energy, but the more energy you put in at the beginning, the more likely it is to remain afterwards. You can't just expect to buy something and just to take uptake immediately without any intervention from a really ballsy country manager. I need, like you say, needs people like that.
That really resonates. It sounds. I'm a big fan of the Kotter model for change.
What's that?
I'm going to ruin it now in the podcast. People will laugh at me, but it's the idea that you've got to build. In order to make a change be successful, you've got to create a need and an urgency for change up front. Right? And that normally takes a huge amount of energy, to your point, which is how do you get a bunch of people to accept that change is needed? In the modern business, everybody's like, changed out, right? But we have to change. And then from then on, it's a case of building a vision about how you're going to get to the end stage. And then about building a team, then it's quick wins. And that's but it kind of insinuates that people get those quick wins and then they take their foot off the gas.
Yeah.
When actually, no, that's when you want to push really hard. And I think, I've made that mistake dozens of times, but if you want the change to stick, you've got to be consistent for an inordinate length of time. So thank you for the preview of the book. You've saved me a few hours. But, and that really resonates. And it was a CEO, very interesting character, but he just says, stuff happens in businesses through sheer force of will. And when you're in a leadership position, you just have to be willing to push really hard to make that happen. And it's why people are obsessed with having owners for actions and projects, is because without someone taking ownership and that person having strength, it's not going to happen.
Yes, yeah. And kind of talking about stories within businesses, is there any, again, you've been in business for a long, long time, are there any myths that need debunking, do you think, when it comes to growing a business or scaling a business? Is there anything that you see over and over again and you're like, that's not true?
Well, I'm 20 and a bit years in. I've still got a long way to go. Okay. If people will have me, and every day is a school day for me when it comes to business. Is kind of, so I try to approach it humbly. But one of the things I was taught a long time ago was that particularly starters and people building small businesses is they make the mistake of hiring people to do the things that they're good at. And in most organizations, people go, I need to grow, so I'm going to hire a sales team. Or I'm going to hire a chief salesperson or CRO or whatever. And that will free me up as CEO or managing director, whatever you call yourself, founder, so I can go off and do the stuff behind the scenes, like all the admin and the accounts and the tax and the stuff like that. It's the wrong way around. You are typically, you will be your greatest salesperson in this company. So hire people to do the back end stuff for you, and then you focus your energy at the front. And then once you've kind of reached a point where even that's no longer scalable, there's a great guy called Matthew Codd. You should have him on this podcast. He's a great guy. I worked with him at R3. But he talks about, he has a method where he has part of a recruitment firm that places chief revenue officers. But he normally spends his first time telling people not to hire one, and spend some time codifying their go-to-market model, taking what the CEO or the founder knows and turning it into a playbook that a junior salesperson or more senior one can play. Because often you'll drop in, sort of extremely well-recognized and capable CRO, but if they don't have the model on how that product is going to be successful and how it's sold successfully, they will fail. And often they get poached from big companies and they don't have the support mechanism around them, right?
Sure.
So that's a common challenge I see, is that people, they hire people to do the stuff they're good at and then spend their time doing the stuff they're not so good at.
Yeah, rather than doubling down on...
And doubling down on what they're good at, yeah. And that will give you that little leap up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. And I felt like everything you say, I'm coming back with a story of my own. But Jimmy Carr was on... is it Steve Bartlett's podcast? Or someone else's podcast anyway?
He's a savvy businessman, that chap.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Wild. I didn't realise he's Irish, Jimmy Carr.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Irish.
Okay, yeah.
Really working class family, because he seems quite posh, doesn't he? And quite like, I can't remember whereabouts he's from. But he talks about how it was like saying, look, say you're mediocre at chemistry, but phenomenal at physics.
Yes.
And you need to pick a direction to go. Do physics. Get rid of chemistry. Like the world doesn't need more mediocre chemists, or chemistry experts. They need people who are like at the top 0.01% of that field. Like focus on that bit rather than the stuff you're crap at.
So what have you? Because you mentioned to me before we started that you've got a Ned involved with it at the moment.
Yeah.
What is it that you are poor at that you wish you could get some more? I mean, it's finance. Is it? What is it?
Oh God, I think when we first started all of it, we were just bumbling our way through. I mean, when we first started, we just kind of moved home to our parents, which is really embarrassing at our age, and then we're doing a bit of recruitment in our underpants for however long. And then accidentally, kind of like your career's gone, you usually say, accidentally ended up in a situation where we needed to hire people and get an office and started to put our big boy pants on, and my cousin did our accounts from the beginning. He still does. And at the beginning, I think he really didn't think I was serious about it. He's like, yeah, sure, Jack, whatever. And then like a year in, he was like, oh my God, you guys are doing pretty well now. You need to really grow up. Basically.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then, he just got intro to us through a connection, and we just hit it off. And as you said, he's done a lot, but also hasn't at the same time in terms of like he made us think about things a lot, which is what you said that is kind of what you do when you go into businesses, right? You just, I guess if you had to quantify what you do as an advisor now, what would you say is your like main role?
I will answer the question, but I was having breakfast with an old university friend yesterday morning, and I was telling him what I do, and he says, don't take this the wrong way, but there's not a lot to it, is there? And I kind of laughed. I says, no, there isn't. And there's a phrase. I've been on a process to start doing the non-exec and advisory work as a sort of, I won't call it a side hustle, but like a part of more of a portfolio career. And I worked with a lady called Lily Newman, and she was very, very clear to us that it wasn't your sweet shop. Was I think the phrase she used. It's like, it's not your job to run the sweet shop. It's not your job to fix the sweet shop. It's your job to encourage and to support and to challenge the owner of that sweet shop to become better. And there's another phrase that's used, which is nose in, hands out. And I've mentioned before, I'm quite nosy, so it suits me entirely. But as an engineer, it's quite a strange way of working, because as an engineer, you are literally trained from the moment you decide to be one to solve problems and to come up with a solution to the problem. Whereas being a non-exec and advisor, it's challenging and questioning them in a way that allows them to see the gaps in what they're doing. Yes, you might tell a story about where you've done it before, but you're not trying to say this is a way to solve the problem. It's just a way of explaining the problem space they're in and how you've seen it solved or not done before. So it's a different way of working, and effectively I'm there to think about the company as a whole, not the year or the quarter or the month. So what are we doing to advance the founder's vision, or is that aligned with the founder's vision, or what are we doing to maximize the value of the organization, or to secure the organization's future or growth of it, or even mitigate some of the risks that organizations face. Like so recruitment, you've got reputational risk and you've got bad hire risk and stuff like that. You could place me in, I could be shocking and it will undermine you, right? But in reality, as an ed, you're probably asking them, well, what happens if this goes really wrong? Would you get sued? What will you do about it? What about cyber risk? Have you put the controls in place and actually stop thinking about the tech, thinking about what you do when you get breached and how you're going to handle that? So it's those kinds of things that the NED is there to do. It's just to challenge and to inform and also cheerlead, right? Because you probably know that running a business is hard. The highs are high and the lows are low, right? And my job is to help people through that process. Wow.
Yeah. Well, so if you engage a new business, for example, what are like the first steps you take when you start working with a new business?
To quote the classic, start with why, right?
Yeah.
It start with why is when I'm working with, just gone through a process about start doing some board advisory for another firm in Surrey. And, it's literally, so why we're here? I'm grateful to have the meeting. We had a lovely lunch, but what is it you want? And sometimes they don't even know themselves. It's just they know something's not right. But in this case, it's, these companies are trying to, they have a game plan. It might be, I want to exit the business, or I want to set myself up for sale, or I think I'm heading for the rocks. What do we do about it? And when you understand that then shapes the questioning and advice you give in the board. Because my job isn't to think about how do you finish this financial year successfully. I try and help, but it's you wanted to be there in 3 years, so I'm constantly challenging them on that. So that's you've got to start with why, because then that shapes the way you approach the problem. And then you can just say, well, you told me you want to do this. This is the implication of what you're asking to do. Are you really comfortable with this? Because you bring me into the room, I'm going to be a prat, right? But I'm going to challenge you in that direction. It's going to be uncomfortable. Is that what you want? And then sometimes you do a bit of due diligence on the business to make sure they're not shockingly run and dangerous. Because there is a reputational risk to me is working with a bad business.
Of course.
Even though I'm a masochist for challenges. And then from then it's a case of how do you roll on and you build up a plan about who you need to speak to, get a feel for what the business looks like. There's quite a high investment of time up front to get the business. I'm not saying it falls away, but it kind of waxes and wanes as you help move them in the direction they want to go.
Is there ever a situation where you have to step in and be like, look, you cannot do this. Like you are going to really ruin your entire business here if you do this.
No, that's not my job. My job is to say, I'm really concerned about this thing. I mean, I'm looking at your cash flow.
Yeah.
Do you have a I forget the name of it now. I should know this. I'm not my head. But do you have a financial facility to borrow if you have a cash flow dip? But it's for me, it looks like you're going at the rock, and then you challenge the CFO and the CEO and go, are you? I might be wrong here. I'm not there in the weeds in the detail. Are you happy with that? They might go, well, actually, no, we're not. And then they do something about it. Or, yes, we are. We're taking the risk. We've got the reserves to ride this out because we're going through a change program. We're going to come out the other side. And that's what you do. Or, that you really need to solve that risk. If you don't solve that risk, it's going to bite you. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for a year, but in 2 years' time, it will. I think you should go and crack on with that. And they've also taught sometimes you have to step away from a business if you think it's going to be bad. It's not not that you publicly say I've stepped away because they're a bad business, but sometimes the thing is, if you are not adding value, taking cash out of the business for me is uncomfortable. It's not what you're doing. It's not a lot of money because NEDs aren't paid that well, apart from PLCs. But if you're not adding value, step away.
Yeah.
And if the partner isn't working with you and taking that value, then step away.
Huh.
Yeah.
I keep asking you people's mistakes that you've seen because it sounds quite negative, but I think it's really interesting to ask it. But when you've worked when you've been part of businesses and seen products scale, any big mistakes you've seen when people are trying to scale products, not necessarily maybe teams, but products?
There's
or products. Sorry.
So when I talk about this, I've started using the Intel TikTok analogy, right? And Intel's not such a great example these days because they're struggling a little bit in many ways. Their process is falling behind, but is Intel have worked out that when they design a new generation of processor, they make a leap forward, and that's the tick. And then they have the talk, which is when they consolidate on that technology that they've built. So they've got to 8 nanometers, right? And then we'll build another generation at 8 to make sure that it's really we've made the most of what we got there, and then we'll move to 6, and that's where Intel struggled. But and what that means is that they get the maximum return from what they're doing. Now, if you take a look, like a lot of businesses with products, is companies' idea of scaling is acquiring more and more customers.
Yeah.
I need more customers. The trouble is every customer you acquire comes with an overhead. I think about it, it's kind of, if you've got a bunch of relationships, every one of them you need to be connecting with, you need to be engaging, you've got to build them, you've got to serve them, you've got to deal with the support cases, all those kind of things. So they come with a lot of overhead. So acquiring more customers means you're also acquiring more overhead, just more revenue, but more overhead. But it starts to become a little bit linear. Whereas what I think organizations think more about is how do you go to that talk stage, which is, okay, so we've got 100 customers that are billing us $100 a month and using a fraction of our feature set in a tiny part of their business.
Yeah.
How do we go off and expand within that customer so that we can then get more revenue per customer, but actually keep our cost to serve broadly similar? So suddenly they're getting growth. They're getting and then you get that exponential growth because their cost is the hockey stick you see in SaaS companies comes from the fact that their cost base tends to be linear, but their revenue is exponential. And most organizations' mistake is they pursue more revenues. They end up with linear revenue growth and linear cost base. And they don't end up with that gap, which then gives the multiplier, which then makes it. So I'm not saying, sometimes you have a product that is just a one and done, right? It's kind of, you're selling a legal product into a legal team, into a small firm. You haven't got anywhere else to go. So therefore you've got to acquire another customer. But you might go into like massive is it WFSP, the marketing people? And they've got 1,000 divisions underneath them. WPP, there we go. You should be then working at how you then navigate across the organisation because you've already got the ins. So that's that cost of sale thing. Well, for you probably work with lots of firms. Yeah, but are you embedded into every part of that organisation to maximise your revenue?
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, you see that a lot in recruitment, specifically. You see a lot of people spend it's very competitive. You spend all this time trying to win a new client, right? And they do this and then they win the client, and then they just don't look after them at all. And then you lose the client, and it's like, what? Why would you do that? Surely you would rather acquire new business more slowly, but keep the business you've got and keep that happy, right? Not just only rely on that, because that's a dangerous position to be in as well, right? But, but focus on that with a lot of focus, but then acquire new business slowly, but whilst also looking after what you've got. But yeah, I'd say that happens so much, and it just seems so bizarre.
It is bad. And if you look at the way that you see consolidation in the industry, there's normally for two reasons. One of them is to get rid of a competitor, but the other one is to acquire the customers. Yeah. Because if you can acquire, a couple of thousand customers at $20 a customer, or whatever, I'm making numbers up, but that's a lot cheaper than hiring a sales force to go out and try and acquire a customer at $2,000 a customer.
Yeah,
it's a very different way of thinking of the problem. So yeah, it's satisfied customers who are using your product, who love it, and you expand. You're getting more revenue, but you're also probably lowering your churn levels down. So therefore, you start to see the margin improvements that go from it.
So you were in, I know pre-sales, but you worked with a lot of salespeople.
Yes, yeah.
And I think sales for me, I think is so interesting. It really, really is.
It's an art, and the very good salespeople are actually quite rare.
Yeah, exactly right. And I don't know if my job would class as sales. Probably is class as sales, I guess. But anyway, I met someone the other day who's been in sales for since they were like a teenager. And they're like 57, I think, now, because they're going to retire in a few years. And I was asking him, I said, if you had to give one piece of advice on how to scale a tech team. Oh, no, it wasn't that. Sorry. I said, if you give one piece of advice in terms of like how you win most of your business, what would you say? And he's like, relationships. That's all it is relationships. And you just, you have to build those relationships with the right people. You never ask for anything until the time's right. And then you feel like you can do, and you're in your comfortable position too. And that's all there is to it. And I said, oh, well, that's not the answer I really wanted. Because
where's the silver bullet?
How do you scale that?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I don't know what the question was really. But I guess, what have you seen from these amazing salespeople that you have worked with? Is there any particular pattern?
So to that guy's point is there's two reasons that salespeople care. They care about, whether you've got buying power. So this is why every salesperson is trying to hit the C-suite.
Yeah, sure.
And then have you built meaningful relationships? And I find relationship in sales a strange concept, because we've had a few meetings and you might bought me dinner and now we're mates. We're not really. It's just we're aligned on trying to achieve something. And really, so if I look at this from a pre-sales perspective, is what the job of the pre-sales person to do is to come in alongside the salesperson and de-risk the outcome for the customer. So it's quite a strange thing, because people think, it's coming to demo the service or design it or be the technical guru. So no, your job as a pre-sales person is to work alongside the salesperson to de-risk the outcome in the customer's eyes. So demonstrate that by working with your tech, they're more likely to get the outcome that they want. And that normally is a mix of the hardware, the software, and then encouraging them to make change and doing all that stuff. So when a customer's doing the due diligence on the tech, what they're going is, what we're doing is quite risky. It could go wrong. Won't look good for my career, won't progress my goals, all that kind of thing. So when they start doing the really detailed due diligence, that's them just trying to do risk mitigation. So the reason why relationships are so important is because if you can minimize, you can't take all the risk away because they're doing something. Zero risk is doing nothing. And then you couple that with a relationship, that person is then comfortable to move forward with you.
Yeah.
So the relationship is ultimately measured by, do I have confidence that if I buy from you, I'm going to get the thing I wanted? And that's for me. That's the way I mean, other people might see it differently, but that's why relationship is so important. Is you just know you are building trust to do what you do, and it's and that's the thing that I think people don't understand. And there's a line between building a bunch of trusted people you work with and nepotism, right? But in reality, is when someone's doing something highly risky, they want to minimize the risk that goes with it. And so they go to people they trust and they know to make that happen.
Sure.
Yeah, which makes why it's so hard for people like you, new entrants coming in. It's like, I work with AN Recruiter over there. They've done a grand job for me every time. Why would I change?
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, look at all these great people I brought into my business. Why would I have something new in? So your job is then to say, well, let me demonstrate how credible I am. Look at my clients. So you're slowly building that trust. But most importantly, you're minimizing the risk of changing to work with you.
If you were going into, thank you for that, by the way. That was really interesting. But if say you were going into a new business of, say, 10 person business.
Yeah.
And then you go in, you go in there, you understand the why, you realize, okay, this is a business that I can help, give my skill set. Then what? Then what kind of things do you put into place? I don't want you to reveal your entire playbook, of course, but just what would you help?
You're insinuating a documented playbook. I'm getting there, not quite. What about, so normally what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find dysfunctions and misalignment.
Sure.
So most organizations have a vision and they have a set of values and they know what they're trying to achieve. But what often I see is just misalignment. So, the classic one coming from a tech perspective is the tech strategy isn't actually aligned to the business strategy. Sure. It's aligned to the goals and ideas of CTO or CIO who typically isn't that good at understanding their peers and everything. I'm doing many of them a disservice. There's some incredible ones out there. And so what I will tend to do is I will tend to go in and say, I'm going to meet your level 1 and level 2 managers. And I ask them similar questions each time. And what I'm really searching for is, do you understand what the other departments are doing or your other peers? Do you understand how your personal strategic goals and the business's strategic goals are lined up? And then do you understand where the interconnections are that are going to make sure you're successful whether you fail? And then I just ask a bunch of questions, or just, and then I might feedback, or it might be just that person's disengaged, or that person's clearly overwhelmed, or that person needs somebody to take to one side and just say, look, you need to be more of a team player, or you need to lean in and start building different relationships. And you can do that through the CEO, or you can, sometimes it's easier if you do it through the people team, because they can often have conversations others can't have. So yeah, it's trying to spot where there is misalignment, because then you know the execution is going to happen. So that's the way every Ned has their own different way of doing it, but that's, I just found through tech is that misalignment in goals and approach has been the prime problem. So that's where I focus my effort.
Well, and you come from a really interesting background, given your engineering background, right? Yeah. So, and that, everything you just said there, the thing I love about engineering is it's so practical. It makes complete sense. I'm not technical at all.
Yeah.
But I've been doing tech recruitment for 10 plus years, and feel like every time I learn something new in tech, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes 100% sense. Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
Like, Agile, yeah, that makes complete sense. Why wouldn't you want to be able to change requirements last minute? Or it just, everything makes sense. So I think you've got such a great USP for your advisory work, because you come from a really pragmatic background.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, and you must. Do you get that feedback? You must get that feedback, right, from customers.
I think, yeah, I do. And I'm also personally surprised, and I mean this genuinely humbly, is that I will spot stuff, and then I'll feed it back, and then it'll get validated completely out of band by somebody else about the way people are behaving. And it came because I worked with a coach years ago where I took the classic engineering approach, which is taking things literally and just looking for absolute markers that something was true. And then I had a coach who worked with me, told me to trust my gut.
Oh God.
And that, for me, that's just a completely alien concept.
Well, you git or gut?
Gut, git. Yeah, it should be. If it never happened, but and it was strange when I started doing that. I just started to see the difference and some people call it emotional intelligence. But I'll go into a meeting, and it will be a shocking meeting, and nobody's aligned. And people walk out going, "Oh, what a great meeting! Everything's going to be fine." I'm like, "Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen." And we go, "Oh no, it will." And then 2 weeks later, I would be right. And it's, again, I'm not trying to flex, but it's just that. It's a skill I've picked. I've managed to couple that technical skill set with that ability to try to understand where people are coming from and bring them together. So yeah, that is the kind of the unique thing I think I'm trying to sell.
And do you ever find that a lot of the time you'll meeting with business owners and entrepreneurs and C-suite people, everyone has amazing ideas, but very little time to execute on anything.
Yeah.
Is it just a case of you going, right, let's just get some stuff done?
No, but it's not about get yourself on the grindstone. I often challenge them. Well, what thing you're going to do is going to give you the greatest leverage? Right? There's a dozen ways to solve this problem. Which one is going to most likely get the outcome you want? And it might not be the one you think it is. And then if you've got a list of 20 things, which 2 or 3 are actually going to move the needle?
Sure.
Because I think there's a culture of busyness in business. I've got that right these days. And people are struggling, they're overwhelmed. They're working 24/7, but they're not seeing the change. And, I try and get them to step back and go, what is really going to do it? You want more revenue, but you're doing a bunch of stuff that's focusing on the bottom line. That's driving profitability, absolutely. Sure. But if the biggest lever you can pull to make a difference is grow the top line, put your energy there.
Yeah.
Because if you can get, taking 1 or 2% out of your cost base, that's great. I mean, I'm always going to be supportive of that. But that's going to make a marginal difference to your EBITDA. Whereas if you go and get another 2 or 3 points on your revenue, you're actually going to make an outside difference to your EBITDA. So it's getting people to focus on what's going to make a difference for them, rather than just how do we get stuff done.
I feel like there's a journey or like a moment in like every business owner's life where, or every like person who's built something and done all right, what they've been doing. When you first start out, you have zero capital and zero experience, right? So you all you have is time, basically. So you're like, right, I need to apply to these emails, I need to tick these boxes, I need to, do these calls, and that's where your time is best spent. Then all of a sudden, you get however long in 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it might be, and you have capital and you have experience. And then just sitting there ticking boxes. Chris Williamson talks about this podcast. He's really interesting. He talks about how actually your time is best spent stepping out of the business and working on the business rather than sitting at your desk and replying to emails and ticking your to-do list on HubSpot and making sure it's all up to date. And wow, great, because you get that really quick dopamine hit.
Exactly
of like,
that. Yeah.
Oh, or I've, like you said, I've looked at the budget and I've taken we're paying for a few things that we don't really need, and I've saved a few percentage points, but nothing life changing. But then it's like maybe taking a day away from the business or handing that work that can be given to somebody else and delegating that work is the best thing you can possibly do to then move the needle for the business in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, I was chatting. I challenged the CEO recently to go and do a task. I won't share what it was.
Sure.
And he was quite grumpy as he spent a couple £100 on a train to go somewhere and took a day out to meet these people because he had a list of stuff that he probably didn't know. But when he came back, he says, "That was the best money I've spent.
Yeah.
Best day I've done because I've now answered a question that I needed to answer."
Yeah.
And to your point, I'm a big proponent of people to think about the opportunity cost. So if choosing to do something is choosing not to do something else. And people forget that. And because people are loss adverse rather than they see the gain, they focus on what they can lose rather than what they're going to gain. So if I don't do that, I lose chance to do those things. But choosing not to do them and doing this will give you different return. And that's, for people like you who run businesses, I don't envy you that challenge. I mean, I've got a small business, but it's focused around me, whereas you've got people to hire and people to look after. So you having to make those decisions every day about where you put your priorities and your effort must be quite exhausting.
But then that's where you come in, right? You help people choose between the trivial many and the vital few.
Yes.
That's what focus on this. Let's look at that later. Do that stuff and then see where you're at. You know?
And you hit the right point, which is help you choose what you want to do. Not me. It's not my sweet shop. Exactly that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm conscious of time. I'm probably going to let you go soon.
Yes.
You mentioned a few people that you've crossed paths with over the years.
Yes.
Anyone who you've crossed paths with who's had a really impactful, a real impact on you and your career?
I didn't prepare for that one.
I should have asked you.
You should have asked me that. I've been, there's a number of people I worked with early in my career, and I won't embarrass them by sharing their name, but and a number of them were my managers.
Yeah.
And it's little things. It's the guy that took me to one side and said, "Stop using I, start using we." It is the CEO who showed me his Get Things Done program, which was he starts each week with a list, a list of his goals, and at the end of the week he just color codes whether he's achieved them or not. And the goal around that is like the thing you control is how you spend your time. So start each week deliberately deciding how you're going to spend your time. And that was very, very powerful. Or the guy I sat next to, who was an amazing presenter and was very good at distilling down ideas to be able to communicate with the audience, and then watching and learning from him that allowed me to be able to present to audiences and express ideas. That was incredibly powerful. And then there's friends and family and my wife's a psychologist, so she's helped me navigate some of these natures of how people operate and why they might be doing certain things. So there's a phrase we like to talk about, which is people act entirely rationally if you understand the place that they're actually in.
Yeah.
And the way they're being measured and the challenges they're under. And once you understand that, then you can start to relate and you can build relationships. So yeah, I just had, as I say, most people say, I just had the pleasure working with just incredible people, and I've tried to be coachable. And those people have then, at the right time, chamfered off the sharp edges of me, which has made a big difference.
I love that image. Yeah, okay. Yeah, wow. I just realised as well, I asked you, I said I was going to get you to draw something.
Yes.
I completely forgot because I got so enthralled in the conversation.
If I can get out of it, I'll be delighted.
I need you to do it. So one of our visions here at Tact is trying to create a world where everyone gets their dream job.
Right, yeah.
So you weren't always Richard Wainwright, advisor.
Right.
Could you please draw what you wanted to be when you grew up?
What I want to do when I grow up? Well,
yeah.
So I'm thinking about 5-year-old me, right? I'm trying. I did get a GCSE in art, even though this doesn't show it, right? And 5-year-old me wanted to be Superman, right? Okay. Laser eyes, wouldn't you do it? Be strong and make things happen. But there's also that kind of like your helping people thing. But honestly, I just assumed that I'd probably follow a large number of my family into the services. So my dad was in the Navy for many years. My cousins are in the Army. I've got nephews right now who are serving, and I just assumed that's the way I'd follow. But what then I did realise is that I liked tech. My parents got stories of me taking apart the cassette deck then putting it back together, and there being bits left over. I remember the Christmas, my parents took out finance to buy me a Commodore Amiga. I think it was 91, 92, I can't remember. And then just being amazed at this thing that you could do stuff with. And yes, you play games on it, Lemmings being a big one. But, then trying to customize the operating system so it did different things when it booted up, or trying to write some software on it. I mean, and it's when I realized that I kind of like had the knack. There's something called Video Plus that people who are really old might remember. So in the Radio Times magazine, there was a code you could put in, and your VCR, your video recorder, would spot that in the transmission and start recording the program for you. And I knew how to work it, and other people didn't. So I'd end up showing people. And then I then realised that knack, that ability was in demand, and then I also realised that it was actually quite well paid. So then those kinds of things. So I always knew I was going to work in tech. I didn't know I was going to end up doing the things I've done. But yeah, I thought that's where I knew it'd end up.
The Commodore is responsible for so many tech careers. It's crazy.
It really is.
You should get royalties.
Yeah, I have got the emulator running on my laptop now, just for a bit of nostalgia every now and then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Last question then. You mentioned that a lot of your family are in the services.
Yes.
Incredible, obviously. Do you think that's had a big impact on just like how you view life? Because it's very structured and routine, and
it does. I mean, there is no such thing as a non-iron shirt, right?
I was going to say,
absolutely that. And I've got pretty lax because I just don't wear smart shoes every day anymore. But I used to be polish your shoes on a Sunday night kind of guy. No, but what it was. There's a phrase like my dad would use, which was prior preparation prevents poor performance. There was another one that goes in there, another P. And it was just this idea of being very deliberate about some of the things you do. So if you, and we teach this in Scouts, was if you are able to look after yourself, you can help others. And it's the little things that I do in my life, which is, and my wife will smile, she listens to this, is my keys, when I come in the door, go in the same drawer every time. Right? Not because I'm a neat freak, I'm actually a little bit messy, but it's because I know when I want to leave the house, I know the keys are there. And I believe it's the reason why in services they are specific about the way you look after your uniform or the way you pack your bag is when something bad happens and you're in services, some bad things are going to happen, you know where your rifle is, or you know where your food is, or you know where the first aid kit is, just so you can use those things. So what I've taken from that is that deliberate, being deliberate about what you do in some ways then allows you to be free to do other things. And you're hearing this a lot of people now. It's this structure and this I'm trying to find the right word here. Discipline, that's the right word, is actually freeing rather than constraining. And I definitely do that. And I think the last thing was it is the actual nature of service, right? It's kind of, I won't talk about the ultimate thing of being an armed service, but it's you are serving your community or your country or your other, it's why I put myself out there to try and help people. It's just I think it just gets drilled into you the way you do it.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you so much. Thank you for the drawing.
It's shocking, by the way.
No, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
My pleasure.
And honestly, it just shows how great the conversation was because I completely forgot to do the thing that I do every single time. But it looks like you're starting a really great career, and I'm excited to catch up with you in 6 to 12 months' time and talk about all the other businesses that you're helping. Yeah,
it'd be my pleasure. I'd love to come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll catch you on the next one.